Hi, Bruna. Hi, Max. How are you
Hello,
guys?
Hi, how are you doing?
how are you?
Good. Good.
Hi.
Hello, hello.
So, you
Delicious.
guys are in Argentina right now. I noticed you drinking mate already. Yeah. Okay.
Sí, 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 sí.
Proof we're in Argentina,
Proof.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So when you're home in Argentina, is it just like straight to the mate, or do you do that in London as well?
So I could tell you the good answer, but I'll tell you the real answer.
Yeah.
I'm a new mate drinker.
Oh, okay.
Smoking a year ago, and this is really helpful. This is the truth. In London, usually, but now I'm going to bring it back with me. Uh,
Okay.
and Max, when you visited Argentina more than almost 10 years ago,
I,
you got
u-
into mate drinking and brought it back to the UK,
I
right?
used to drink more mate before I lived in Buenos Aires.
Okay. All right.
Why
Interesting.
is it?
Yeah, yeah, probably some East London thing where I thought it was really cool and esoteric.
Uh,
Um,
How do you take your mate, both of you?
we recently befriended this great couple who have their mate brand, and on the side of their ¿cómo se dice? El packaging, it gives you
Hmm.
instructions. So I've been following it. So basically, you grab your sack of like the
Yeah.
dry mixed
Yeah.
herb, and then you have to make sure it's tilted slightly. There's a little hill, and then you put
Right.
water, and it has to be at 70 degrees. So this is the thing
Right.
about mate. Like if you drink with boiling water, it's not correct, apparently.
Yeah.
You burn your mouth. So
No,
it has
no, no. Like, I'll be honest. I do that all the time because I forget, like, to like stop, turn off the kettle, and like I drink mate at home. I buy packages from whenever I'm in like Argentina or
or
Paraguay
Brazil, no?
or Brazil. Yeah, and so I have like a stock in my cabinet, and then I boil water, and then I forget to turn it off. It gets too hot, and then I'm like, all right, whatever, and I just pour it in the cup, and then like the fucking the spoon, the what's it called, the metal spoon,
Bombilla.
yeah, the bombilla in Argentina.
Yeah.
That yeah, I fucking burn my mouth on it all the time, and it's like half my mate experience at home is like that. I just have to wait a little while, and
Yeah.
yeah,
it is, yeah.
I'm laughing because they can be quite specific about the different, like, and
oh
all rules are presented as they're the infinite rules, but
yeah,
then different people have different styles.
right,
Bruna has this half of the mate must not get wet.
I understood.
okay.
Oh,
Cannot over wet it.
Do you know about the half of the
I've heard of that, but I think that's very specific to. Is it just Buenos Aires, or is it just like parts of Argentina? Okay, yeah, it's like
containers.
there's a lot of regionality to mate drinking that I haven't quite deciphered what is correct where. But yeah, but then that's weird to me because some of it doesn't get wet at all, right? And it's just yeah, so it's just
doesn't make sense?
dried tea in the cup. What does that do?
That doesn't make sense, does it?
Yeah,
Yeah, what is the science behind that?
Well, I long gave up trying to make sense of everything here.
yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense in Argentina. So
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you guys drink coffee too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Max is a big
Way too. Yes. Far too much coffee. Yeah.
with the what's it called? The Vialetti, the mocha.
My mom.
Uh,
okay,
yeah.
But I can't always drink the coffee he's drinking. Gives me palpitations. So I'm
No,
Okay.
it's too strong.
yeah. You guys
It's complicated here, isn't it? Coffee.
very expensive.
right.
Yeah, and usually, yeah, not the best in Buenos Aires either.
Well, there's lots of specialty coffee in the city
Yeah,
now,
but
right?
oh, I guess so. Yeah.
But
Anyway,
is it quite expensive?
Oh, it's extremely
yeah, good
Okay.
coffee. Yeah.
Yeah.
because the government changed like the tax bracket from it becoming right. Not a. But yeah, I think there's great baristas and great
Yeah.
coffee sellers or makers.
Mhm.
On the production side, everything's yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so Anchoa. Let's talk about the magazine. What was the inspiration for Anchoa?
Uy. Well, there's many ways you can tell this story. I think. No, I'll try to be like, shh, you guys tell me.
Can we have one answer each? Or no?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, no.
I'm
Sure.
gonna be allowed. I'm not the host. Sorry. I'll go quickly. So basically, from my point of view, Max and I are together. We're a partnership, and he always talked to me about doing a magazine, and I always was a bit confused. I was like, "Oh, a magazine? I don't know." So for us, it started with the actual physical format, and
Mhm.
really thinking about, do we need another magazine about X
Yeah.
subject? So it really came from the object, and then of course the subject matter completely, like, it changed my life. But I was always interested in gastronomy and in food, and Max likes to say that I was trying to figure out where I fit in because I was writing a little bit, but I was like, I'm not sure. I even
Mhm.
like a little stage in the kitchen somewhere, so I was like, okay, do I like it this side? And then when we finally were like, okay, we're going to do a physical magazine, an object, there's a great responsibility with that. Okay, what is missing in food gastronomy that we felt globally? And this was the pandemic, which I think was a great eye opener for many. So a lot of people already were very eye opened, but I think it. So for me, it was very important to do like more of a holistic, like, talk about gastronomy, maybe not entirely just in the kitchen, but, and of course now we see it a lot more, and we weren't inventing the wheel by any
Mhm.
means, but especially in Argentina, we felt like it was still very much so lacking. It's people. I get pitched, and I'm like, "Do you have you read the magazine?" And it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to get pitched at all, and I mean it in that way. But
But it is funny.
it is funny. It's like, have you read it? And I realize most people haven't, but it's okay. It's fine. We keep canoeing in dulce de leche. It's like
Yeah.
Like
a
paddling.
sea paddling.
Yeah.
Sí, remando en dulce de leche. What is your
Ah,
view, designer?
that's a good one. No, yeah, it's like Bruna says. I could from the outside I could see Bruna, with all these passions for food, and not just food, but the production of food. Also, like some consumption of food,
Yeah.
like restaurants, cooking as well. And so that was where my sort of like, I've made, or I've been involved in several magazines in the past, like in the past 20 years of my career. And I really felt like, Bruno's got a natural talent for editing and bringing together themes. Every issue, there's never been a theme,
No.
and then Bruno's like, oh, this one actually seems to be all about, and I'm like, well, I don't think that's coincidence. She sort of swears every issue. No, it's totally a coincidence. It's sort of like, yeah, there are lots of ways you can describe that as coincidence, but it's
Is it something like there's some kind of thread in your life to where you want to assign a certain type of story to build the magazine around? And maybe if you don't even realize it or not, it's just like unconsciously that's going on in your brain when getting pitches and saying, well, maybe try it like this or like that, and then at the end you kind of figure out what that is. Does that make sense? Is that what's happening? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
from the outside that looks like what's
Yeah,
happening.
well, what
Okay.
starts to happen, what you start to realize is that it's a lot of like-minded individuals that are also very diverse in their view. But at the end of the day, I think that the stories of gastronomy or of food that we're seeking to tell are about the understanding the story of human life, and in a way that is community-based. So when you have these very big viewpoints that are also small. I always say we go forward, we go back, and you can look at things very detailed, and you can look at them from very far, and it still brings. I don't know if any of this makes sense, but it still brings like similar sensibilities, like this plurality of voices. And I start to realize like a lot of it is about the way you want to live your life. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of people who either lived in cities and then were like, okay, I need to change my life, and I move away, and they're very fortunate that they can become a producer, or they can, sell everything and go. Or there's people who sadly come because life does not admire producers, and especially in Latin America, they are poor, like poor by uh, currency standards, very rich from a life standard. So and you can see that there is this hunger, for lack of a better word, for these real connections. And I think gastronomy and food, and it's funny, we say gastronomy, but gastronomy can also be very alienating, can be very elitist, can be very
Hmm.
machina. So we use gastronomy to show people that gastronomy has so much to do with what isn't happening in the kitchen only. I don't know, it's very abarcativo. Hopefully that made sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So wait, Bruna, you and I had a conversation like a year ago, I think,
Yeah.
something like that, and you told me it was Anchoa was basically an anthropology and ecology magazine, but it's just food was the thing that kind of tied it all together. But at the same time, you didn't want it to be an academic magazine.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, it started being a magazine about produce and the people who dedicated their life to it and all the different. And then
Hmm.
as I was like, as I started learning a lot more, because that's the thing with Anchoa. Like, I'm not an academic. I haven't had an experience of more than a decade in a certain field. So for me, it was like as an editor of this, I was learning with every issue. So as we progress, it's like, oh, we are also an ecology magazine. Oh, we're also an anthropology magazine. And it more than anything, and I don't want to bastardize or, disrespect those magazines that are purely about that, but it was
Hmm.
just, it's a multidisciplinary or, magazine.
Well, it's always been about sneaking these things in to into the consumer's like conscience
Yeah.
without it seeming like it's
I'm telling you what to do.
too heavy or too it's keeping it. There's an element of trying to keep it like it's somewhat light and commercial so that people will pick it up, right? You want it to be you want people to want to engage with these topics.
I wanted to not stay in the niche, which of course it is. It's a very small publication, but if we can change anyone to be more curious about a subject and therefore change their consumption habits without being told you got to do this, you have to buy it here, but
Hmm.
rather through maybe learning something new, and then that toolbox opens up, and they're like, oh, next time I'm going to go to this restaurant, not because someone told me I have to go, but because I learned something about the subject that sort of correlates with this way of. Do you know it's all about,
Hmm.
right? This domino effect. But definitely, I don't want to be crude against magazines that are like very much about a subject. But sadly, in Argentina, at least, which is where we started, if I tell you buy my anthropology magazine, I
Yeah.
don't think most people will, because they're looking at something else. There's a
Yeah.
glossiness. So
Hmm.
we're trying to use the glossiness in an honest way, of course, but show you that there's so much more. That's why our first issue, we opened with a female producer. She's an agroecological producer that focuses on aromatic herbs, and it's all about agroecology. It's like, I think that's for me made me so happy. Like, trying to show like this is gastronomy way more than
Hmm.
you. I don't know, maybe a bit snobby for me to tell you what it is.
No, no. I mean, I think in general in Latin America there just has been this kind of divide. It's either the purely academic magazine that's very wordy. It's not for everybody. It's usually for specialists in those specific fields. And then you have all these like lifestyle publications, and just everything else in between has just been missing, I think. Julie, do you agree with that?
Well, I was thinking that, I mean, it's multidisciplinary because food is by nature that way. It covers everything from our lives in so many ways. So it's naturally going that way. But I think you're right. I think the fact that you're trying to focus on, I mean, not in consumption, even when you're affecting consumers in the ways you were saying, I think it's an effort to not go back or not to be academic or theoretical about it, but it's more about showing how all these things are made and how that might make a difference in how people consume and think about food. Because, yes, there is too much focus on the enjoyment, enjoying food, enjoying, I don't know, the menu of a restaurant. We it's so e- everywhere. I think we are all, or people like us working on this, we are a bit tired of all that. And I think in an interview made to you, Bruna, which I think, I mean, it summarizes very well what the project is about. It caught my attention that you said the joy of knowledge about food. Let's enjoy food, but let's enjoy the knowledge about it, which is it can change in good ways the way in which we enjoy it. So I think it's great. I mean, I think and I think it's a great way to connect Latin America too, because maybe chefs are connecting it. They invite each other to cook, and that's a way of becoming a region. But I think this effort of focusing on things that are before and beyond consumption, it's another way of united us as a region. I think that's important too.
Super. Also, it's a region that people think, most speak the same language, let's say. It's
Yeah.
no, it's very disconnected. I mean, you guys, with all the research that you do, know way more. But I'm just starting because now Anchoa is more Latin American. We're moving. We're still always, Argentina is our home base, but we want to try and bridge more of the continent, and it's
Yeah.
difficult. It's not as easy.
Yeah, and because it's a niche project, and I think, I mean, there is always this challenge, right? How do I talk in a critical, thoughtful way about things and I reach more people? That's always a challenge, right? In practical ways, have you seen a change in that, or have you come up with strategies to get to a broader audience? Because the people already interested are already interested, right? You'll think, but I don't know. So yeah, I'm curious about that experience, and I mean, giving them publishing by itself is already very challenging. So
So challenging.
There are some ways where we try and engage with people who we look at people who we think they'll have an audience that we could convert in that sense.
Yeah.
From people who are just interested in food and trends to being interested in something a little bit beyond that, and how you can profile those people and look for those people and places, whether it's a particular chef or restaurant, or whether it's a particular artist or journalist.
Yeah.
People who enjoy the work like Sebastian.
Yeah.
His
Sebastian
work,
Lopez Brac, amazing photographer from Rosario in Argentina.
and how you can bring his work that already has like an audience of people who really respect his work, and how you can start asking him to tell some of the stories that Anchoa are interested in. That's one way of doing it, isn't it?
Through collaboration.
Through
For
collaboration.
Sure.
Yeah.
I always.
That's a great way of
Yeah.
summarizing. Yeah.
Sometimes they're like, okay, we get, I don't know, it's like Anchoa is this. But it's not only this, it's every collaborator from every issue. And I'm so proud. We're so proud. Like sometimes it's more than 20 in one single issue. And that's what makes it. It's the community. So as we start braiding it wider, that is, like, for example, Hambre de Cultura in Colombia, they sell a magazine. And I know that through that, we've been able to, and now it's always through collaboration, I think.
Yeah.
For now, I hope it can be other avenues too.
There are definitely people, there are definitely consumers there who are alert to some of the I'm trying not to use the word con, but there are these cons in ecology. The paper straw, like how often I see people making jokes about the connection between the paper straw and billionaires flying their jets for 7-minute journeys. Like, people are alert to these, to these sort of fallacies that we've been sold, and it's those people are going to restaurants and they're complaining about paper straws. So now you can, with Anchoa, you can tell them something a little bit more funny.
Yeah.
Like what you can think about beyond, what the solutions are to that sort of problem.
And we are always, if I may say, holding the reader's hand, like not in a, like together. You know what I mean? Because I've had collaborators who I love, and they're very much. Anchoa is an activist publication in a way where it's not screaming at you. Not that screaming is not effective, definitely, but for us, it goes through somewhere else about the enjoyment, right? And so sometimes with collaborators, they've wanted to tune up the volume, and I'd be like, no, let's make sure they finish your piece. Like for me, it's important. Like I want them to read it because it's more knowledge. Like, there'll be other avenues to scream at them and to throw red paint at them. Great, but we're doing this very beautiful piece of there's a beauty. I don't know. I'm not trying to do censorship. I'm just trying to
No, it's good advice. Let's make sure they finish it.
For me, that's always very. As an editor, I'm always reading. It's like, okay, how can we? What are they going to come after, or how can they put you in un casillero? In Argentina, there's so much. It's like this is crazy to me. In Argentina, agroecology and organic, and maybe this happens in other parts of the world too, but at least in Argentina, it's politicized. So they don't trust each other. We live half the year in the UK. You go to a farmer's market, everyone's happy. Of course, it's a very different situation, very different budgets, very different lifestyles. But so for me, I'm a bit frightened. I'm like, I don't want them to read this piece and think that we are this, because they'll stop reading you, and then there's no progress. There's no dialogue. Do this. So it's like, no, we are not that. We are trying to think, and it's not. I don't know if this makes sense. So it's always interesting when we collaborate to bring in a bit of our, not rules, but parameters, let's say. How much?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just want to kind of keep it open-minded and keep it about asking the questions rather about, what's right and wrong. I think most of my best work has been in small regional print magazines. Like, mostly in Europe or a few in Latin America. And yeah, these stories don't get widely read like something that goes online for a big mainstream publication. But I do think they get more deeply read. And I think that's really important, like if you can get 200 people to really read 5,000 words about something, like truly read it and understand it, it's way more effective, I think, in the health of the world or whatever you want to call it, than 5,000 people just like glimpsing through on their phones really quickly and then forgetting about it in 10 seconds because there's a cat video or something that just popped up, or girls fighting in high schools, or I don't know, something like that.
Labradors for me.
Yeah, Labradors.
But yeah, that's we should put that on a poster.
I can die happy.
Yeah.
I can die happy if that happens to something.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
And it really is the thing when you're doing a project like Anchoa, you really just that really hits the nail on the head. If you can get a number of sincere people to read it sincerely and really think about something, then that is much more important than the number of click-throughs that the website gets, and the number of it is much more important.
Yeah, and it's hard to like calculate that too. It's like, because you don't get all that feedback that suddenly people, when you post something on Instagram and everyone's like, yes, or all these exclamation points and likes and hearts, even when they don't read it. Like I know things, like I'll post an article, like a photo of an article on Instagram, and all these people comment on it, but then I'll go back to the the actual page, like the stats of the article, and like, you motherfuckers didn't read this. It's like, you assholes, you just clicked on the idea of the story, but you never actually read it, you never actually thought about it. And so it's hard to kind of balance that, because you don't get that adrenaline rush quite as easy from something in print in a small niche print magazine.
And Bruna touched on that.
Yeah.
You get people pitching, and it's quite clear they haven't read the magazine, even something online. Yeah.
But I think you pointed to something, Nick, that I never thought about it that way, because I'm always frustrated in how you reach out to more people, right? But I think if a few people read carefully, how they are going to replicate that in different ways. That's another way of, maybe you don't hear from them. Maybe it's not a direct comment on the article, but maybe in their own jobs, especially if they have power to affect things, maybe it changed something, or maybe they create a project because they read an article about natural wine, or they saw the film. We'll talk about it. And so, I mean, it's less tangible, but maybe it's happening.
We are, like, occasionally we'll be at a table, we've been invited somewhere for dinner, or I'm just thinking of a few instances where we've been somewhere and people have said, "Oh, we know Anchoa, and we really enjoyed your podcast episode." Yeah. And you kind of like, we're not like feigning or faking any humility there. Like, we're genuinely like very pleased to hear that someone.
I get surprised. I'm like, oh no.
Like, quite often Bruno will be like, and show her the magazine, and they're like, yes, and show her the magazine.
Are you sure?
Like, magazine is, Bruno. I think they're talking about your project, yeah. And
hopefully policymakers. That'd be great.
That's what you want, yeah. Yeah, just people in the food industry, and it's nice, but it's beyond nice. It's that thing of like,
I feel
it's important.
See, all the hard work.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yeah, I'm curious about the editorial process because it's annually, so it's a lot of work. And how do you go throughout the year about it for people that maybe are not familiarized how that works and why it takes so much, right? So much time.
Yeah, I mean, to be frank, at first we were going to be biannual, and then I realized that's extremely ambitious, and we don't have the money. We barely have the money to be annual, so imagine, it's really difficult. So I would say that it could take shorter time. I think each issue takes about 7-8 months, because after we come out with one, because it's annual, right, we all have a little bit of a rest, an incubation of relaxation, or maybe of just absorbing and seeing what is going to inspire us. What are we reading? But really, for me, every issue is really, how has it thought out, is all the questions I have as a consumer and as someone who doesn't live behind in the kitchen or in a huerta, in like a greenhouse, or not a greenhouse, in the fields. So it all starts from so, for example, when issue 1 was sort of like, we thought it would be just one-off, like, who's gonna read this, like, but we got very fortunate. There was this energy going on. People had all these questions, were upset, the pandemic, so it was like, I think we got very lucky. But issue 2 for me was like, okay, now we're going to talk about seeds. Like, for me, that issue was like, okay, I have so many questions. And like, why is it illegal in Argentina to exchange seeds that are not part of the certification? So seeds that are like open pollinators, which is like open knowledge, like, no, those you cannot exchange. Like, there's all this stuff. And I spoke with policymakers, and I was like, oh God, we're getting into some dark terrain here, because I could see the speech of what one was telling me and the other. So it was like, maybe it's better to talk to policymakers that are not from Argentina. Maybe for me as an Argentine, I need some distance. But so I think every issue, it's sort of like, and now that I'm no expert, but now I know a bit more about the seeds. So it's like, okay, if we're going to talk about seeds, now we're going more into communities. Like, first it was more like, okay, let's talk the principles or the basis of someone who knows nothing about a subject. So as we start doing these pieces, okay, now I think this issue of Anchoa is it's actually a lot about tradition, nostalgia, all the things that you would immediately think of in gastronomy. It's taken us 5 issues to sort of do the circle and be like, okay, now that we've sort of, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like,
It does
or
make
like the
sense
natural
because-
wine piece, like we did our first one. It's like, what is natural wine? How do you make natural wine? So now it's like, okay, now we're looking at the same stuff. We're a bit more mature maybe, and it's like, okay, we can get deeper in a different way, if that makes if that answer. I think I went all over, but really it's just a bit. For example, in this issue we have a piece about commodities, and we have a piece about commodities not because I was like, but I was like, what is a commodity? How important? Like, we should talk about commodities, right? Everyone talks about, do a piece about corn. Okay, bueno, but that's a commodity. Why don't we? So we have a piece about corn told in a different way with the great. I'm so honored that I'm gonna show off Cristina Barros. She's this Mexican journalist. She's amazing, and she joined. I was like, oh my god, I am like your fan. So then we have, and then the person who wrote the commodities piece, she's this young environmentalist. She works with young kids for the Jóvenes por el Clima. Anyway, and she's super political, and it's just fantastic to have all these different voices and the angles. And I think really sometimes a piece comes from a connection with someone. It's like, let's do something together. What can we do? So it's not so much about thinking about a theme or a subject. Sometimes it is. It's like, ooh, what is a commodity? Or if that makes, it's a bit very disorganized. It's like,
But you're probably right. You're maybe more confident now with your experience that you are going to approach topics that are usually approached in a superficial way, in a more complex way. And I always say there are not stupid questions or stupid topics. It's what are you asking about them? That's different. So yeah, there is not something that by itself is dumped or shallow. No, everything is telling you something about the world. So
yes, I agree.
And then you have to switch from editor to distributor
Oh yeah.
and
Gosh.
promotion and marketing and all those things, digital marketing.
You're
There
more
is-
digital marketing.
But there are so many, why it takes a year is because you're building an issue, but then now there'll be a period of like 2 or 3 or 4 months where you're going to be so focused on making sure people actually
Hopefully.
can receive the magazine.
Yeah, all the logistics, sending it out. We also we have a podcast that is very, very atemporal. It's there sort of sleeping right now. We have like, we have a piece an episode that's been in post-production for over a year. I feel so bad. But when it will come out, that's one of the beautiful things. But what's discussed is still relevant. But so we try to do a bit of that during the year, but I wish it had a lot more cadence, but it doesn't.
So the digital aspect of Anchoa, how important is that?
This is digital man right here. It's always a fight because I'm very much like, no, this piece is for the print, not for digital. Or a piece he thinks is good for print, no, that's for digital. There's like, for me, there definitely is a difference. I would not, and I love that. Thinking about a piece for a specific format, I think is very part of the core of what we do at Anchoa.
People won't engage with a digital piece as long as for as much time, for as many words, essentially, as they will in a piece. So, that's like one key differentiator, isn't it? Is, how in depth to this subject can you go in a digital piece? It's not, there isn't like some kind of level of quality. It's not about like, oh, that's not interesting enough, so we'll put that in digital. It's something else that makes it digital, I think. And you have to, and we don't have guidelines on that. We just have vibes, don't we? So so that makes it interesting when people are pitching you ideas or when you see something. And then the podcast is another sort of string to the digital bow. we went through a stage of like looking at sort of Patreon style digital content where we could put that behind a, you don't want to say paywall, but some membership platform.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. There are so many things that are difficult purely because you need to be able to accept Argentine pesos as a payment method. And just like immediately, that makes it so complicated. Because there are Patreon, for example, you wouldn't be able to use because they don't let you charge in pesos. And until recently, if you paid, this is getting a bit technical now, but if you paid for a subscription in Argentina with an Argentine card and the processor was based abroad, you effectively got taxed so much, like 90%, that it became double. You were paying double, essentially. So if we were asking people for, $2 a month, it became $4. But if you were asking people for, $20, it became $40. And those things made those attempts very, very complicated.
Max is great at problem solving, and he's always finding these. I think like the adversity makes you more creative and find a way around. So he is always looking at alternatives, and we can try this new platform or this, and we have Club Anchoa, which today is more of a friends club, like people who just want to be patrons.
It's more like patrons than. We don't want to have that content gated only for those few members because it's more important.
We would commission a digital piece and not many people would read it. And it was like, what is the use of this? It really makes you think. So now it's more of like, you want to support Anchoa and you want to have access to our digital archive, which is basically everything that's in the magazine.
Okay, so it's everything in the magazine now is uploaded digitally.
Yes, but it's not open to anyone. That we do put behind a paywall, let's say. But then we've started to work with digital collaborators who will write different pieces, opinion pieces, and that were used to live behind a paywall, but now we've decided that needs visibility and it makes no sense. So that's why it's a bit difficult for us because we don't have any advertisers. The first sort of external money that came in was through our short film that we just did. That was a bit of a commission, but it was fantastic, and we weren't really advertising anything. But someone put money in to do it and funded it, and that was for me was amazing. We're looking for more opportunities like that.
So I was getting to that. So you just made a film. I don't know what.
Yeah.
And it's called El Sueño del Vino, and it's kind of about ancestral winemaking in northern Argentina and Cafayate, essentially. What brought this on? Tell that story.
So basically, my mom was like, okay, we need to. We needed to connect with more people to see how we could sustain Anchoa, because Anchoa was always, not self-sustaining, but self-funded, exactly. And it was getting to a point where it's like, okay, we can no longer get it from our own pocket and do it, see what is viable out there. And through these connections, we ended up, meeting with Enrique Piñeiro, he is a businessman in Argentina, who does a lot of work with he rescues refugees, and he has a boat in the he's you Google him, he's a
philanthropist. He owns a restaurant. He owns a
restaurant called Anchoita, and
I've heard of it. Yeah.
He came first. The name is his. But no one copied. We are definitely. So basically, we met with him, and he was just very interested in this specific winemaker that appeared in the film Mondovino. So through that conversation, this project started. And when we started analyzing how we could, what possibilities were there, that's when we pitched him a multi-format investigation. And I was like, okay, like if we are going to go there, we cannot not film. Like we have to film something. And he has a background in film, and he's the film. So there was a bit of that, and he was an amazing collaborator, and also us as a small independent, I don't know, magazine / production studio. He gave us so much freedom and was, he's like, I'm funding this for Anchoa, like, and it was an amazing collaborator.
If you put a Venn diagram of collaborators' interests, like, his interests overlap in
entirely,
like in in a perfect
because
sense.
even his restaurants within the Anchoita, panaderia, the cava, different proposals that they have, he creates his supply networks, because of the lack of infrastructure in such a big country like Argentina. So he's very in tune with small producers and everything that goes into that, and also doing it very correctly, like doing it with all the right certifications in terms of the Senasa, like food, like everything is done so well. So he is creating, I think, an example to follow, maybe for the government to put in. En so basically, when he talks to me about this winemaker Antonio Cabezas, who appeared in Jonathan Nossiter's Mondovino in 2004, I started researching, and I realized that he passed sadly in 2021, but that his nieces and nephews, they were still making wine. And this whole world opened up because actually there are more vineyards in Argentina that are smaller than 5 hectares. I don't know if hectares, but it's than wider ones. And you would think, okay, that makes sense. But in Argentina, when you think about winemaking, you really, at least most people really think about these huge wineries that export. And it's like, that is a winemaker. And for me, it was really like, how does a winemaker look? Who is allowed to make wine? Because there is such an elitist world around winemaking. Usually you export and make a lot of money, or you're losing money, but it's your hobby and whatever. But there's people who are making wine out of subsistence. And first, to hear anyone making anything that you eat or consume out of subsistence is so unheard of. And it is a great reality, but it doesn't get lots of visibility, and you don't really get to these stories. But then second, someone who's making wine and is doing it really well, which shouldn't be a surprise. But bueno, there is the
there's that disconnect in Argentina, especially. It's like you only hear about those 20 people in Valle de Uco or whatever, and like around Mendoza, and then everything else, it's just like you hear nothing.
Yeah. And there's, if I may add, there's also this syncretism that happens because this winemaker is of an indigenous community, and the grapes came with La Vid came with the colonialists, with the Jesuits, and so you don't really see so many people from an indigenous community making wine because it's not. So then, for me, what is such a beautiful element of the story and important to show, because it is part of the territory we call Argentina today, was a syncretism that happened with the Pachamama and making wine, which was more European, and how those two. So we went in April, which the 1st of April. August, not April, August, which is the Pachamama Day, the 1st of August, and we were in a vineyard in Argentina doing an offering to the Pachamama. I thought this was, as an Argentine, I was like, I never knew this existed. And it's so important. And for me, that is also a key part of the story of just showing these realities and who is allowed to make wine and what is your preconception. So a bit of that. And also, if I may add, we tried to fit a lot in 17 minutes, but there's all these different stories. There's also this painter, Calixto Mamani, who he passed, but we also referenced him a lot because it was also about going against the status quo of how to live your life. A lot of these stories were people who were working for others, were working in their fincas, and were never probably going to break that cycle. And the stories that we show are people who, no, they broke the cycle and they have their own wine and they make wine for themselves, for their family. So I think that there was a bit of that, a resistance to go against this sort of elitist wine world and other wines. So there's all that a bit. I love that project. I hope we can make more films because...
So are there any others in the works? Any other films? No, not yet.
Not yet. I mean,
okay.
Something small produced, like See, but nothing to that scale. Like because of Enrique and his team at Anchoita Films, we worked with colorists, we worked with montagists. Like it was the post production took more than a month. Like I have never worked at that capacity, and it was beautiful because it reminds me a bit of the magazine that we do. For those, I'm just going to show. I have them here. This is our first issue, but it's all printed on like paper that has an important feel. It's not newsprint, which is also important. But so for us, it's always said like these stories are important and they deserve to be printed in this good paper with a sewn So for me, it was also the same thing with that. Like that story deserves to have all that levels of post-production because it is important. It is, and maybe you don't see these sort of stories told with that level of collaboration in terms of finessing, or what would you say?
No, yeah, just the quality of production.
The quality of production.
Yeah.
So that was, and if anyone is interested, we are always available to do that. Sorry, collaboration. Sorry.
No, it's the thing is, it's hard to find publications that do want to actually collaborate anymore. Like there's so few. I think we interviewed the founders of Full magazine recently, and yeah, it's become just so disposable, so transactional to work with a publication these days that you don't build that relationship. You don't build that relationship with the subject either. When it becomes like that, it's just, you have 3 days to get in, get out, tell that, 1,200 word story. Here's your expenses, if you're even getting that. And, that's it. And yeah, it's sad because it's like the really good things, it takes time. It takes time to build relationships and talk through ideas. And it's not just a, 200 word, pitch in an email with a bio. And it's become that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like we started at here, and I don't know if we're ever going to get a collaboration like that. Because, we went for 7 days. There's been even some of the producers, Enrique and his team brought them over to Buenos Aires. It was quite special.
And the team the filmmakers and journalists that you work with on that project, again, I've already mentioned Sebastian.
Natalie Alcoba, Argentine-Canadian journalist. She's fantastic. Her work is great. And when we had a filmmaker, what's the director's name? I'm so sorry. I love it.
It's all right.
Pablo Domenech, ahí está. I have very bad name situation. But sorry. Save me, man.
I'm worse with names.
And Sebastián López Berg, who we mentioned, he came and he did the direction of photography. And because not only that, we did it was a multi-format piece. So we have and this is where digital is important because it was a digital only piece for us. So that these are more realms that we are exploring and trying to just cement beyond the print publication. But basically, we had a long format piece written by Natalie. It's bilingual in English and Spanish. And then we had the short film. And we will also be publishing a podcast episode about it, more in retrospective, in the near future. So it was like playing with all these different things.
Happy to commit to a podcast.
See, I know, it's work. That is no work. And now when the issue 5, it's in the printer right now, our next print issue, we love to work with little QR codes. So now when you open the magazine, there's a specific feature in the magazine that relates to the film as well in a different way. So you can scan the QR code and it takes you to the film. So the idea is to, because it's been published, it doesn't mean that it's not, there's something with these magazines.
That's really important. Everything is evergreen in that sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
If I see something interesting, I'm always thinking of things that I can push towards Bruna And she was like, no, that's a trend. That's that thing is only going to last. Like, that's not going to last.
He's
longer.
exaggerating.
I'm not exaggerating because there are things, and Bruna has like a good sense for what's going to work.
But we removed the date. We used to have the year. Because people misunderstood. It's like, no, you can still buy issue 1. Yeah. It's still relevant. And I think with digital, there's also that thing. I mean, even though it always lives there in the digital realm, it's like we're trying to do work that is still relevant. Sometimes maybe in Argentina, on the podcast, someone's talking about the price of something, and it's like, okay, fine, that is not relevant, but that's relevant this week. So, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think with Anchoa, I think the digital, for us, is very important because it can converse with the print and to try and unify that, how everything is related, so people can understand, like, just a holistic perspective, which also can be a word that's bastardized, but I don't know another one. Like, that's why I love ecology, because ecology, you have to look at everything to understand. And that's why I think ecology is a word. When I started entering into the ecological realm of things, I was like, this is life. Like, everything is ecology in a way, how you should observe things and how but when it gets all very...
What is your biggest dream with the magazine right now?
Your biggest dream?
I would love to be able to continue to do these, to continue to work in the multi-format sphere, where the magazine maybe is like our hero product, because it's really hard for it to ever make money. So maybe sustain it through these digital collaborations, investigations, like, I don't know, what do they call it? Slow journalism? Like, I don't know if that's also like, but something more like that. And definitely to continue to grow in Latin America and to try and be able to participate in helping to tell stories that really are a collaboration and bringing us together in Latin America. For me, that is so important. And even as an editor, when I'm proofreading like pieces that are written maybe in someone from Chile versus someone from Colombia and our proofreader, the corrector, he is from Argentina, and he's having a hard time. It's like, wait, but this, so we have to put a lot of asterisks. This is said like this here, but so I feel like maybe we can get to the point where our corrector doesn't feel like what is, like more awareness of how our neighbors say things and
right. Just let people write the way they talk, and that's hard. That's something magazines usually don't do. Like, even within the United States, they like homogenize everything into this one language when it's traditionally so broken, so broken up in terms of style, the way people talk and the accents they use, the slang they use. Like, in Latin America, it's crazy. Like, it's like I've had such challenges just like remembering the names for different fruits and things from in different places.
I'm learning Spanish, and for me, some of the things I've learned in Argentina, I see a word written down. Wow, that's got a lot more L's in it than I could have ever imagined. Like, for the Argentine pronunciation of words. So I think, that it's one of those things that I think the European, I'm trying not to say the European mindset, because that's such a new piece of language, but they cannot comprehend the size of the continent, for example. We recently had quite a few friends visit the city, and they were talking about, nipping to Ecuador or nipping to Colombia, and you're like, oh, it's actually really,
that's a 12-hour flight.
It's not close. And people ask me, how often I go to Colombia, like it's the equivalent of London to Barcelona. And you sort of have to.
Yeah, I know. It's like you have to put it in perspective. Like, you can walk from London to Barcelona almost. Like, that's how close it is. Like, like when you look at Europe on a map, and then like that's just like part of Bolivia. I don't know.
I mean, all these countries by themselves are pretty big. So
well, the perspective is literally incorrect on the map. You know,
Oh,
the way the map
tell me about it.
is like the most fascinating thing.
Don't get me started on that one.
Yeah, I love the
It's
website
just crazy.
where you can
Yeah.
take a country's outline and move it on the projection to another country, so you can
But
see.
there are people that think that Colombia is below Mexico, like right below Mexico.
Right,
Or
yeah.
people in Argentina that thinks that Colombia is Central America or an island. It's just tropical. It's all that the same thing.
Yeah,
And, you know, we do the same with countries in the Far East that we don't know about. So, yeah, just look at the map. I mean, it's fun.
look at the map, but don't trust it too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, updated.
I think
Hopefully.
that I don't want to answer for Bruna, but there's definitely something that you're pursuing is more a readership outside of Latin America that can start to understand these stories
Sí.
and respect the stories and the continent. And
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that actually. The decision to be bilingual as of the last issue, the issue 4, I think was the first one. What caused that decision to be bilingual?
It was
can I tell the honest version?
yeah.
No, I think it's important.
European snobbery, like 100%. Like
Yeah.
that's the only answer really. Is in the United States, slightly different, where they would stock. We had stockists in the United States.
Yeah, very friendly, the US, when it came to it being a Spanish publication for us. Our experience, so different than Europe.
But in Britain and in Europe, we had experiences that you could say were almost outright aggressive towards the idea of stocking a magazine that wasn't in English. In England, you expect that mentality, like we're pretty awful when it comes to learning other languages, and you know, we as a country somehow decided to leave the European Union. Like that's Britain, you know. But we've had some very funny experiences. One in I can't.
No.
Well,
really? Come on, now you have to.
I'm not going to name and shame. But there was
No name.
but one magazine shop in a country where, you know,
It wasn't. Yeah, it was so bizarre, and you go out of your way to get them your copy.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like literally like sending it through, paying money to send it, and then they get it and they're like, sorry, we can't publish, we can't sell something that isn't in English.
Isn't in English. So they're not in England. The owners of the store aren't native to the country that they're in either. And you just think, how do you have the balls to say this? Like the sheer audacity to say, like, we won't stock that because it's not in English.
Yeah.
You just think, wow.
Those are moments where I get very frustrated and I try to just breathe it out, and then, you know what? Okay, it was not meant to be there. So then what happened to us was like we weren't getting to places. It's like, because we do live half the year in the Northern Hemisphere, so it's like we want the magazine to be, for me though, it's more important for it to be sold in Latin America. It's a bonus that it can be in the Northern Hemisphere. There is maybe more money there for the magazine to be bought, maybe, or at least at the time. But now we have stockists in the UK.
We've had positive experiences in as well. There was one
from the get-go. They were very honest with us, and they said, "Look, your magazine is great. We really like it, but sadly, we can't stock it. Let us know when it's bilingual." And I took it. I was like, I respect you. You know, it's great. And that was the issue.
That's not true. You were offended at first.
I'm always offended. I'm a sensitive person, but it's okay. And then for me, for a while, there was like, no, like we need to make sure that Anchoa is in Spanish, and it was more of a political thing. And it was like, why can there be like a Japanese only magazine?
Oh, wait. Yeah. That's a whole nother thing. But that one store, for example, they were good to their word. They said, come back when you're bilingual. You came back when they're bilingual, and they said, great. But, like, then they
Yeah, they were fantastic.
There was a distributor in Britain who,
This is
it's a wild story because we felt like they were really good for us, and we really made the effort to go and see them in person and talk to them.
It was very far. We traveled all the way there.
And the response came like, we won't stock this unless it's only in English.
Only in English.
Yeah, they were like, we won't stock bilingual magazines, and we replied and said, we've been to your store. We've seen that you have bilingual magazines. It's fine for them to be bilingual in
French or Japanese.
No,
Swedish or something. Yeah.
Korean and Japanese were their bilingual publications. So then you really start to feel like, oh, this is a cultural snobbery where in Europe it's very easy to hold Korean or Japanese cultures in some higher regard or some aesthetic regard. And I use the word aesthetic deliberately.
Yeah.
And we sort of said, like, these are stories from Latin America told by Latin American journalists and collaborators. Why would you think it would be in English?
Why would we do something that their own community wouldn't be able to access? Maybe they're bilingual, but it doesn't matter. It should be in the, and that's the bit where you're just like, okay, you will never win. Bilingual is a huge expense for us because we have to, of course, hire someone who's going to help us in that language. It's a lot more expensive language, usually, to have someone to proofread, and then there's more pages.
Yeah.
We have a whiz here as a designer who has helped it not be double the amount because of his amazing
it's a big
grid.
It's a big complicated thing.
It's not just about we are too lazy or we don't want. No, it's an investment. And when you go and do that, and you travel really far to bring them the magazine, and then they're like, sorry, make it only in English. I just say, bueno. I get upset there. I'm like, no. But that's
quite incredible.
Oh, my God.
But you do want people outside of the Spanish-speaking world to read it, right? Like, so, I mean,
yes,
there has to be some of it, too, right? Like, you do want this kind of understanding to reach the rest of the world, I assume, yeah.
You do, but when you realise that there is a gatekeeper there,
definitely,
the distributor, the point of contact.
We found another friend of ours who publishes these beautiful books, all in English. He was told that his books were too commercial, so we understand that maybe there's a specific situation with that.
No, but there, like, you have somebody who really is a gatekeeper, and they're deciding this is not something that we think that we even want to attempt to sell. These are not stories that we even want to attempt to distribute and sell. And
if I may add, there are other gatekeepers. For example, here in Argentina, we've had situations where when we try to access the sphere of like arte impreso, like printed art, which is like really these fairs of like very independent publishing. So because we're gastronomy, we are shunned as well. Like it's like gastronomy shouldn't enter this. Maybe there it's like if my magazine is only anthropology. So we're also constantly trying to enter like spaces, and we get gatekeeper because it's like either no, gastronomy no. Like food has a thing where it's like, they see it as like maybe obvious or I don't know. So it's funny. It happens in both hemispheres in different ways. And for me, I just keep trying. I email people all the time, and we don't have a distributor, but we've gotten to get the magazine into really beautiful places, and I hope I'm pushing to get it everywhere because just like here, right? In Argentina or in other Spanish-speaking countries, there's a lot of people who speak English and they consume magazines from abroad, and they would, have you seen this magazine? I love it. So maybe Anchoa can also do the inverse, maybe. And we have a beautiful group of friends in the UK that make me feel like it's possible because they show it to other friends and people are interested. So I don't know. Maybe that's one dream, Juliana. That, we can have more stockists and more readership in the Northern Hemisphere too.
Yeah, I think
I think that's the big dream. I'm a bit frightened to say it. I hope I don't have to say it, no? Send it into the world.
Yeah.
Juliana, any last questions?
No, I mean, I got stuck in an idea about, I mean, talking about commodities and advertisement, which, it's always a question. It seems to me that the things that make a community viable or that holds together a community are things that are meaningful, that have intrinsic value, like these contents, meaning, wherever it's meaning. And I think advertisement or commodities are the things that symbolize something, success or purchasing power, all these things, but they don't have meaning by themselves. And I mean, there is a big difference. Those things alienate people in the end, when people keep just getting, doing that. But I wonder if there is a way for readers and audiences to be more thoughtful about where they invest their money, because money is there, we all have to use it. But the more people support projects like these or Nix, the Substack, so that's a way of putting your money in a different place, which is not, should I really have to replace my jacket, or do I need, a new pair of pants? No, I want to consume meaning. I mean, my wish, my dream, if I can have a dream today, is what if instead of consuming commodities, which is only making people sadder and emptier, I put my money in things that have meaning by themselves. And is the only way, is the only viable way, is the only way of surviving. And this community, that's what being in a community means. I don't know. I mean, I got stuck in that idea when you said
I love
communities, and then I was talking about advertisement, and yeah. So I don't know.
I Yeah, no, this issue, one of the themes is community as resistance. So, like, working
Yeah,
together is actually resisting. Like, they
exactly,
don't want you to work
exactly.
together.
Yeah,
They don't want
yeah.
you to work
No,
together.
they don't. They want you to be segmented and alone and sorry. Pero bueno,
And for people to understand that meaning is the thing that makes you, it's the only fulfilling thing. It's not consumption for the sake of it. That doesn't, it's just not real. It's not,
no.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a few pieces maybe that we've published online that fit that, where they're quite specific pieces about a ritual of food or of community,
Yeah.
and those decisions are really important. Whether just deciding to support your local business rather
Mhm.
than rather than go to the chain. That's always That's always like the first most important,
Yeah.
like foot out the door. And can that translate into media as well, where people are supporting smaller media organisations? I have a few that I sign up to where they only want £2 a month, and
Yeah.
I can give you £2 a month to.
Yeah. If you organize your budget, it's not that hard to support, 10,
Yeah,
20 projects.
yeah. I cancel my subscription to the Athletic,
Ah,
the football publication, since it went to the New York Times. I'm like, you don't need my money anymore.
Yeah.
And I can then I've got £8 more I can give to somebody who's doing an
Yeah.
independent news project.
yeah.
Um,
There's definitely, you have to be careful about the context of expect. Also, I think it's so great to
yeah,
support, but for example, in Argentina, for me, at first, maybe when I was living mostly in the UK and then I came here, I was like, no, you have to support this. And then you start realizing you have to be careful because not
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
can support that, right? So for me, definitely. That's why I've always, from Anchoa, shied away from telling you, go consume this, this, and this, because
it's a great business model. We don't want to ask people for money. We don't want to take money
No, it's been
Yeah,
my
of
problem
course.
for
from
my whole
people,
life. So
from people and brands. It's not sustainable. But
no, pero Juliana said it perfectly. O sea, for me, it's about the ideas. and what that can bring. And I don't know, for me, it really always was about like the pleasure in food, but the pleasure in understanding food or knowing more about food, and how hopefully we believe our readers have the capacity to be like, I'm going to find restaurants on my own that sort of, rather than us coming being like, this is the list, or this is where, which I think a glossary of where to find things can be really useful as well. I'm just
Yeah.
maybe a bit frightened of doing that, because what if I recommend something that I haven't done my due diligence to make sure
It's a
that
lot of
owner,
you feel the responsibility greatly in that, don't you, of endorsing things?
yeah, I'd
Yeah.
rather like endorse like different points of view, maybe. And but yeah, I would love to. I always was. I think that you vote with your plate, right? Especially those people who have more disposable income and can really. That is it's a responsibility, and I think there's a community based power there, and those people who can spend and dictate, and that's why for me, Anchoa was always about talking to people who aren't of the niche. It is a niche, but it's always about like, you never thought about this. So that's why I always say, like, I try to get it into spaces. Like maybe someone buys it because it's a nice table book, maybe, or a coffee table book, and they didn't read it. But I know that maybe a friend will come by and open it, be like, oh, and maybe that for me is enough to slowly help show different perspectives and to bring stories that are not welcome into new spaces where they should be. That for me, I used to say we were a fly on the wall, but then I think, Max, you corrected me. This is a bit like, who do we think we are? It's just an analogy.
Trojan horse.
The Trojan horse.
Yeah, fly on the wall is watching.
You know, yeah.
Trojan horse.
And sometimes we've started getting from like furniture stores where like, oh, we would like it in our showroom. And I'm like, okay, bueno, why not? Right? Like it's about entering these new spaces. And do they know that there's a piece about Patagonian genocide? No.
Yeah.
Maybe. Do you know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah.
so I think that is very valuable. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is an important point and strategy of looking a certain way, of making a luxury product and making something that's pleasant on the eye, where we've considered the typography and the illustrations and the photography, where it's not a wall of words that people aren't going to engage with, where it invites the reader in different ways. Those are the things we've considered in the print product, so that it can sit in a luxury, in a quote unquote luxury
a
space.
museum, or a shop at a museum, or places that are very aesthetic and tend to have pictures or books about architecture, and there's this. But also conscious about wanting to reach it. Like it shouldn't just go to a certain demographic, the magazine, and we're really conscious about at what price we sell it here in Argentina. You go to a store like Zara in Argentina, and a shirt it's more expensive than in other countries. A white shirt is going to cost you, I don't know,
4 times as much.
4 times as much as our magazine. And our magazine is still not just like 30,000 pesos, give or take. That is about $28, which is expensive. In Spain, and we're like, oh, that's too expensive. So it's interesting, the market and all of that you have to consider. But for me, I don't want it to be seen as a product that is for a certain few. No.
Yeah.
Pero he's a designer. I start. We do like to make something pretty, or not pretty is like pero an object. There was always that idea of the object, responsibility, and
It's a craft. Yeah.
claro.
Yeah.
Sí.
And the community, like tying back into your question, there is a community of people who really appreciate that we've made something.
Yeah.
Like
It's very nice.
that we've because there's a certain deference that you pay when you make something, when you really put your passion and your finances and your time into making something that you really sincerely hope people will receive as something quality. And we've had a really nice response of people who are
They're really happy. They're like,
Yeah.
thank you for doing this in Argentina.
Yeah.
The Argentine has a thing of like, oh, this would never exist in Argentina. There's some, and it's just so, and the people we've met, the community we've built. For me, this magazine changed my life. I don't mind that it doesn't make for me, it gives me so much currency.
Community. That's the question. And it really is like, there's a community of people who are so generous, and there are ways in which, you know, you might not be able to have the success that you can have when the community support you. And it's small things like saying, oh, we'll host your launch. And we, you know, and yeah, and people are very generous in that sense. You know, the people who come to cook, and people who who share their time, people who share their space, their resources, you know, and those acts of generosity are part of being in a community that really make it possible. Like, it wouldn't be possible to launch the magazine without the annual support from people who,
Yeah, definitely. And we're hoping to continue to build community. You know, we, someone from Puerto Rico who has Onoteca San Miguel, they found us and we stuck the magazine there. And we've always been talking about doing a feature, and now we've made a feature in Puerto Rico. It's like, you know, there's these people who find you, and then you start having these friendships with people you've never physically met, and it's just so beautiful. And I can't wait to do like little launch events around other countries. Like, that's something I really visualize in my head, and I hope Anchoa can move beyond and enter other communities.
there were people we met through the magazine at our wedding.
Yes.
So, you know.
Oh, Anchoa was mentioned a lot.
Yeah.
Like, to the point where I mentioned it in my wedding speech, and like someone, like the printer saw it, and they're like, you mentioned us in the speech.
Didn't get any sales at the wedding, did we?
No sales.
No sales at the wedding. Didn't have a card terminal at the wedding.
And we should have.
Yeah, we should have.
All right, Bruna, Max, it's been a pleasure speaking with you both. Congrats on everything, and we'll keep watching and see what you guys do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Nick and
much.
Juliana. Such a pleasure.
A pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And your piece is coming out soon, Nick.
Oh, great. I can't wait to see it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No, thanks to you, Bob. Really, congratulations.